Welcome to ATL Insider. I'm Carleen Brown. Now, we've all heard the saying that men are from Mars and women are from Venus, and that may be part of the reason why so many people are having trouble in the relationship department. So today we're talking about relationships, and joining me now is a special co-host who is no stranger to ATL Insider. His name is Ryan Hirsch. He's a graduating senior here at Clark Atlanta University, and he's been working on the program for the past 3 years. So Ryan, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm just glad to be here. You know, I always enjoy coming on the show and working on the show behind the scenes, so to actually be in front of the camera is fun as well.
Well, good, because especially, well, this show idea was actually your idea because you wanted to talk about relationships and the importance of understanding all of the elements that make a relationship successful. So let me ask you, what do you think is one of the biggest issues that couples have in relationships?
Well, you know, I think communication is always a big issue in relationships. It's an area that can be problematic because if you don't have proper communication, then the two people won't understand each other, and that can lead to more disagreements. Another thing, you know, when people first meet, a lot of times they have that spark and that passion in the relationship, but over time, sometimes it dies out. And so I think working to please your partner and keep them happy is also something that is important in relationships.
I would agree with that. I think communication is really essential, and then you know there's always that trust factor.
Right.
So people don't always portray themselves to be who they really are, and you've got to be honest and let people know who you are out of the box so that they can really make an assessment about who they are in a relationship with. You know what I mean? Well, we're going to talk about that and so much more on today's show. We're going to have a resident expert coming in to talk to us all about relationships, communication, and sex. So don't go away. We'll be right back here on ATL Insider. Welcome back to ATL Insider. Now today we are talking about relationships, and it's sure to get you interested because we've got a young woman who is making her mark by helping young men and women form healthy relationships.
That's right, and you can hear her every Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. on her Love and Relationship program on 1380 AM radio WAOK. So Spirit, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys both so much for having me.
Okay, now we know you get all kinds of calls on your radio program. What seems to be the biggest issue among couples?
Why can't we figure out how to get along? I mean, hands down. At the end of the day, it really comes down to, are we hearing each other? Do we see each other eye to eye? And if we don't, can we still find a way to get along and be happy?
So when you're talking about finding a soulmate, because there's so many young men and women who are looking for that special someone,
Right.
And it seems as if what should be the easiest and, you know, most common thing for us to be able to do, which is relate to one another, seems to be so difficult. Why is that?
Well, that's because we never learned how to have good relationships. You know, we go to school for years and years and we learn geography, we learn math, we learn history, but we never learn how to have good relationships, which is so unfortunate because we spend most of our lives wanting to be in good relationships. And it's what we're constantly doing. We have relationships with our parents, with our siblings, with our friends, with our teachers. We're having relationships with the audience right now. But we never learn how to do that effectively and how to effectively communicate to each other. And so it becomes frustrating.
Okay, so when you are trying to effectively communicate, what are some of the different ways that men and women approach relationships?
Well, I think it initially is very different. Men tend to be more visual in nature, so they typically are drawn by what they see first, whereas women tend to be looking for something very different. So if you're not clear about what it is that you want, which many people in relationships today aren't, they're kind of just drifting into things. And if it looks good, then I'll try it. And it's not until 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line that they realize that, wow, what did I get myself into? And by then, unfortunately, we're moving so fast in our society today that, you know, a lot of people are in relationships where they're sharing finances at that point, sharing children at that point, living together at that point, and then they find themselves stuck in relationships that they really shouldn't be in.
Okay, and do you think in part it's because there are so many people who really don't know themselves? So they jump into relationships, and what they begin to discover not only is about this person, but about what they want and don't want, and now they're in a relationship trying to navigate through themselves and their own inner relationship with themselves as opposed to being with someone else.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. So many people today don't really know who they are, what it is that they want, and so again, they drift into someone wanting them. Well, they're attracted to me, so, you know, let's try it and see. But if you had a clear understanding of what it is that you want, what it is that you want to get out of a relationship, and also where you are and what you can put into a relationship, then you'd have a better understanding of the mate that you're most compatible with.
Okay.
Okay, now you mentioned that oftentimes people rush into relationships. Do you think that's the cause that there's so many divorces now? I heard something crazy, like nearly 50% of relationships or marriages end in divorce now.
Well, it might sound crazy. To me, it's a lot more sad than anything. But with first-time marriages, yeah, you're looking at a divorce rate of about 50% now. Second marriages, 60%. Third marriages, 82%. So what you're seeing is that the likelihood of successful relationships decreases with the number of marriages, not the opposite. And so what I think is happening is, just as a society, we have become more accepting of divorce, and we've become more accepting of rushing everything. You know, we're this fast food culture. It's this drive-through and get it. You can even get married in a drive-through in some states.
Well, that's true.
And so because we are able to do that, and because we're not moving slow enough to really know ourselves and to know the partners that we're choosing, we're making mistakes and then just opting to jump ship rather than seek out other ways to get help.
Okay, well, talk a little bit about that then, because if you're contemplating getting into a relationship, obviously there are some prerequisites that you should have for yourself.
Absolutely.
What would you suggest that some of those are?
Number one is definitely taking time to clear up past baggage.
Okay.
Especially with women, because as much as I hate to say it, we tend to be more emotional than men are. Or let me clarify, we tend to
Yes.
express ourselves more emotionally than men do. Men are just as emotional as we are, but the way that we express it is very different. But so many of us are carrying baggage from past relationships, from our relationships with our parents, from our relationships with our siblings, just growing up. And so you go into a relationship looking for someone to complete you rather than already understanding that you're a whole and complete person yourself.
Oh, you need to say that again,
Come
because
on.
that is so absolutely true. I think people
Absolutely.
don't realize that your relationship in an intimate setting is really a reflection of relationships that you have with other people. That is so critical.
Absolutely. And most importantly, it's an extension of the relationship that you have with yourself. Your partner mirrors how you see yourself. They treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. They speak to you the way that you expect them to speak to you. And so if you're not getting what you want out of that relationship, it's not necessarily about the partner. It's really more about you.
Okay, now how do you let a partner know what you need in a relationship if they're not necessarily there? A lot of college students may be in long-distance relationships or things of that nature. So what are the success rates like for those, and how do you make a long-distance relationship work?
Well, long-distance relationships are very unique. They have their own distinct characteristics that they need to make thrive. So obviously, if the physical connection is not there, you have to spend a lot of time developing that emotional connection and communicating. And, you know, in this technologically savvy society nowadays, it's much easier to do that than it has been at any other time. You have webcams, you know, cell phones, you have text messaging, you name it, you can make that connection. But if you're talking just specifically about long-distance relationships, I think it's about being open and honest with each other, just as in any other relationship, but understanding that the challenge that's there is going to be, how do you satisfy the physical disconnection? And if you're able to do that, and you're able to be honest about what you need in order to satisfy that, then I think you have a chance at success.
Well, I think that's a good place to take a pause. We're going to come back with you a little later in the show. You're going to tell us about the common mistakes that men and women make in relationships. But what are we going to talk about next, Brian?
Well, up next, what do men and women really want in a relationship? We'll talk to a couple of young adults to find out right after the break.